Welcome, everyone, to Sports Shorts Daily, presented by the Bears Casino. Ronnie, Rantz, Playboy, Marty in the house. Hope everybody is up and at 'em and ready to have a great one today. A lot of different topics and things to get to, but let's just first, more reaction as the world's kind of it's been all over national news, ESPN, local news. We talked yesterday with Joel Davis about Darius Geis' situation at LSU, Marty. But now that you've had 24 hours to kind of marinate on this story and reflect on it and gather a little bit more information, any new reaction?
None other than, and I'm usually very on the side of let's wait till we have the facts, not jump to conclusions. And I don't want to, especially in the court of law, but it just adds up that he's probably guilty of these crimes, in my opinion. And I'm not super pleased with LSU's reaction to it.
What about LSU's reaction? Are you disappointed?
I just don't even really see a statement. I think they said something about it, but it's not on their Twitter account. And again, I don't want to throw LSU completely under the bus, but I'd like them to be handling it a little better. But we talked off the air. You think there's probably legal reasons why they maybe haven't, and I get that.
Yeah, it's sort of a catch-22 because no matter what you say, it's as if you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And yeah. I also think that from LSU's perspective, they're probably investigating very quickly. All right, is there anything more to this? The part of the story that disturbs me, and unfortunately, it's not the sexual misconduct part, because we hear about this all the time. There's people that this happens to, athletes, non-athletes, all the time. And like I said, and like Joel pointed out yesterday, if Darius Geis is definitely guilty of these allegations, that happened in the D.C. area a few months ago, as well as what happened at LSU back allegedly in 2016, and he deserves to pay the ultimate punishment, whatever that is. But from LSU's perspective, and is the one that concerns me the most. And again, can't wait to get more information, because allegedly 2 coaches, a nurse, an administrator at LSU were aware of these allegations. If they were aware of it, I got to believe there's more people that were aware of it. There's just no way that a tennis coach is told by their player, hey, I was allegedly raped by a football player, and that it just stays. They make the internal executive decision with just tennis to not take it to a bigger platform. You run immediately to the AD, you run immediately to the head football coach. If not, you immediately call the LSU police, which is what I would have done, which is what you should do in this day and age. But that's the part that I want to hear. The E-Hollywood true story is what happened beyond those 4 people. Right. I can't imagine that when somebody says the word rape, and especially involving an LSU football player, when you're an athlete on campus, it has to have gone outside of those 4 people.
Yeah, just you would think the chain of communication would be much wider than 4 people. And something I do want to touch on in the article, after I reread it, I think the Coach O thing may have been taken a little out of context. That just sounds so out of character for him. I have a hard time.
What are you talking about?
When he said, God, what was it exactly? He said, everyone's girlfriend sleeps with other people or something. He said that to the football player that was dating one of the girls, and that according to the report. And I just that part just doesn't seem right to me.
Yeah. And the other problem with some of those comments, those off the cuff comments like that, you're talking about people trying to relive conversations that happened 4 or 5 years ago. In this case, 4 years ago. And sometimes, what somebody says, it gets twisted, turned just a little bit. It may seem a little bit more callous than the actual comments were. But either way, this is how, no matter how this goes down, we know this. We know Darius Geis is probably never going to play in the NFL again. I think for Darius Geis,
injury prone plus all this, and you were a running back. No.
Right. So for him, it's just trying to stay out of jail, right, and save as much reputation as he can. If you're Darius Geis, if you're LSU, and this is always hard for people to do in life, transparency is king. if they would just come out and put it all out there and be completely 1,000% honest, fire a couple people if necessary, pay that settlement if necessary, and hey, we're going to do better. We got new policy, blah 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 blah. That'll go a long way. But usually in life, they don't do that. You try to rally the troops, circle the wagons, keep everything quiet, get everybody to say the same story. We'll see. We'll
I believe that they will. I have no reason to think that they won't do that.
Some other news. You're a big NBA guy. Last night, a big story in the NBA, and I think this could end up being a big story. You got two series that you've got the Portland Trailblazers taking on the Lakers, and of course, Portland won Game 1, and that's big. But you love the Clippers. You thought the Clippers were the premier team in the West. They're currently 1-1 with the Dallas Mavericks in their series. Doncic had a big game last night. He always has a big game. They win 127-114 over the Clips. But Porzingis got kicked out of Game 1 in the third quarter when it was like a coin flip game either way. Mm-hmm. If he doesn't get kicked out of that game, there's a very realistic belief that the Mavs could be up 2-0 in this series. Regardless, it's 1-1 in this series. And with no home court advantage because you're playing in the bubble, I'm telling you, man, one of these LA teams is probably going to go down.
I think there's a good chance, and actually, I have a Lakers championship ticket, so I was on them.
You and Lakers, not Clippers.
Yeah, but I mean, the Clippers are insane, and Luka. I just got to talk about Luka for a second because that dude is ridiculous. To be 21 years old, and it really doesn't matter who's guarding you. Like he has Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on him, and they're not even slowing him down. Like he cooked them last night, and it's not going to be long before he's just the unanimous best player in the NBA, in my opinion.
Where is he right now? I mean, one, you like the Greek Freak, right? You think he's number one?
Ooh,
of course, you could have any player right now for next year. You could take any player. Who do you take?
Oh, I take. Well, if Kevin Durant was healthy, I would take Kevin Durant, but
he's not. Right, he's not. Talking about right now, we can't. Woulda, coulda, shoulda.
Okay, so take one player. Probably Giannis.
Yeah. So if he's one, where's Doncic?
I think he's sneaking into the top 5. I don't think he's quite there yet, but I think he's sniffing it.
You don't have him in the top 5. See, I think he's top 5. I think he's conversation top 3, and like you said, maybe one day could be the best player in the league. But man, what an unbelievable player! And look, I think this Mavs Clippers series is going to be so fantastic. Obviously, Porzingis isn't going to do what he did before, and with him in there, man, that's an equalizer. So that's going to be a great series.
If I could just say one more thing about the NBA, it's really showing that teams that came in and like played their players and didn't treat the bubble games like they were meaningless are doing well, and the teams that came in and just chilled are struggling. Milwaukee, LA, both LA teams really. So yeah, that's my main takeaway.
Some news out of the Pac-12 that's interesting, only from a standpoint of I think it could be a trend, and you maybe see this happening more and more. Merton Hanks was named the Senior Associate Director of Football Operations for the Pac-12. Merton Hanks was a former NFL defensive back, meaning anything and everything that touches the Pac-12 from a football standpoint, Merton Hanks is going to kind of have his approval of, almost like a football commissioner. I think this is a good move. One, it's a good move for the Pac-12, who obviously needs it, right? They've been in disarray the last few years. They're not relevant as much as they used to be in the big scope of football around the country. And they've elected, of course, not to play football this fall, so give Merton Hanks an opportunity to kind of ease into things. But I think you're going to see other Power 5 conferences do that because football is just too big business to not have as many hands touching it as possible. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a good move. And granted, I've never worked in an athletic department, so I don't know exactly how all this works. He seems qualified. He's coming over from Conference USA. He's an all-pro NFL player. I think he could be – football is certainly, the biggest animal of all of college sports. So it would make sense to have one guy in charge of that whole thing. Granted, the more delegation you have, the more like confusion you could maybe have at the top. So like we'll
Yeah, you
see
gotta
how
have
that.
one voice.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see how that goes, but it makes sense to have one guy only thinking about football. It definitely does.
A guy who used to play in the Pac-12 who's now in the major leagues, Trevor Bauer, of course, the pitcher for the Reds, who's 3-0 on the year, and he played at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring up his name because he's in the news, and it's not a surprise. He's always in the news. He's always this sarcastic, smart-ass guy who's tweeting something or texting something, or he's got a political statement, or he decides he's going to be the commissioner and come out strong against the Astros, for example, and whatnot. So Trevor Bauer now is done with his Trevor Bauer thing, and he's got the Joe Kelly cleats that he wore in warm-ups yesterday and the other day. Major League Baseball came down and said if you wear the Joe Kelly cleats in a game, you'll be suspended, and all that sort of thing, and there'll be a fine. And these Joe Kelly, remember Joe Kelly's a pitcher for the Dodgers that got suspended 5 games. It was 8 originally, and then it moved down to 5. He's going to be suspended 5 games when he comes back to the DL list. And Joe Kelly, of course, allegedly hit, threw at the Astros hitters. So Trevor Bauer comes out. He's got all these statements. I don't know about you, but Trevor Bauer, I'm just kind of like, dude, just shut up and pitch, man. You're a good pitcher. Just be quiet and pitch. It goes back to in 2010, LSU played UCLA in baseball in an NCAA regional in Los Angeles. And the Jumbo Sports Network, my company, and CST, we did the regional. We went out there and televised the entire regional and carried it back to the entire CST as well as other sports channels at the time around the country. And I had to deal with and interview Trevor Bauer a couple times that weekend. And I can tell you that I had no idea he was going to become as great of a pitcher as he was. And he was. And by the way, Cole Henry was on that team as well. Mm-hmm. But Trevor Bauer was such an arrogant person to deal with, even at 21 years old. The guy, you'd have thought he'd won 6 Cy Youngs already, by that point. It was just that L.A., Orange County, sort of sarcastic, cocky, over-the-top guy, even at a young age. So it really doesn't surprise me that he's become the guy he is. And he's always puts himself and interjects himself in the middle of every controversy involved in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, it's funny for me to comment on because I feel like if I was a Major League Baseball player, I might be exactly like him. But yeah, I really didn't like this move, and he's always doing something. And he came up with the Diamondbacks, and he was like the number 3 prospect in all of baseball. Was supposed to be a godsend. Came up, really wasn't that good. He's figured it out now. So yeah, he always has had like a little bit of a sore spot on me. But just injecting yourself into the Joe Kelly thing makes so little sense to me. And I think Joe Kelly is so lame. Like that what
you don't like Joe Kelly?
He was on the Red Sox in 2018. They were guilty of the exact same thing. You're going to be the guy? No.
You won a World Series stealing signs in Boston, right? Even though they technically haven't been.
Yeah,
proven.
And then you're going to make that face and you get on Twitter and Instagram and you're just all of a sudden oh, I'm against cheating. Still got that ring.
The Reds have to deal with another topic, and that's Thom Brennaman, the Hall of Fame. His dad was a Hall of Fame broadcaster, and Thom Brennaman's been doing games. I first got into Thom Brennaman was with the Cubs and doing games at WGN back in the day, and he was the Braves and whatnot, and I think he does a great job. But unfortunately, he got caught coming back from commercial break, and this is a mistake a lot of broadcasters have made over the years, not knowing when you're on air. So that the old saying, if you got a headset or microphone in front of you, you got to always assume that the tape's rolling. But Thom Brennaman had an anti-gay comment in the first game of a doubleheader. He was actually replaced in the middle of the second game of the doubleheader. That's big time. But nowadays with Twitter and everything, and reaction was so strong, in the middle of the second game of the doubleheader, he was replaced. That was it was shocking.
Yeah, it really was, and that's just not a word you can get away with saying on the air anymore. That's just the world we live in now. We got to get used to that and understand it. But
it's what the British call a cigarette. If anybody's wondering what he said,
right? But he said it with a little more oomph.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. He kind of finessed it, but. Yeah, no, it's unfortunate because I've been a fan of his for a minute. He's got a great baseball voice.
Do you think he ever announces again, or do you think as a society we have no acceptance of that from a standpoint? We don't give anybody a second chance. You say it, you're done. Do you think he's done?
I think he's done for now. Like, I know they just suspended him; they haven't officially fired him yet, but I expect him to be fired from Fox fairly soon. But I wouldn't close the door forever. You know, like he's got work to do. Like he's gonna have to go do charitable causes for pro LGBT like communities and stuff like that. He's gonna have to like put forth.
Don't forget
effort,
the Q.
Like, Q, yeah,
yeah, there you go. Very
yeah.
important.
No, he's definitely gonna have to put forth effort. But yeah, no. But did you see when he was in the middle of his apology and Castellanos hit the home run and he had to call it?
That was pretty unbelievable. In the middle of his sincere, I'm so sorry for what I said.
I've always considered myself a man of faith, and Castellanos gets a hold of one.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, I hope, based on his history and the fact that he's never done anything like this before. But I'll tell you one little story where that he gets a chance at some point to redeem himself in the future. But I'll tell you one little story. Lynn Rollins, who was on our show a few days ago, Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame broadcaster, was doing a game years ago. I mean, we're talking like 20 years ago. Was doing a softball game in Oklahoma, and he messed up one of the opens. You know, so like usually you tape the open that you see on the broadcast about 15 minutes before you go on air, and they were having some technical problems and had some busts, and so they had to end up going live with the open. And Lynn forgot it was live, and he made a mistake, and he went, "Oh shit, let's do it again." and they were like, "No, we're live, we're on air," and he had to just go with it, but literally on air. He went, "Oh shit, let's do it again." And thinking they were taping it, and it was CSSE, a Comcast Sports Southeast, who's no longer in business. They were based out of Atlanta and were around for a number of years. When the SEC network came around, it kind of put them out of business, and they held it against him. I mean, he didn't do games for them for a few years, because the guy who hired him was so like because of that mistake, they didn't use him for it. And eventually they got over it and they started using Lynn, and of course he did a lot of work. I mean, when it did a lot of work for everybody else, but it was just kind of funny that again, it happens to everybody. Not that sometimes those mistakes, you got to make sure you always think that the camera is rolling. One last thing before we let you go, I guess this is the trend of 2020 is old ass boxers coming back into the ring. We've seen it with Tyson and others. Tyson's over 50 now. Oscar De La Hoya, 47 years old. He said, "You know what? I'm getting back in the ring." Fight. Now, is there a market for old guys beating the crap out of each other? I mean, it's unbelievable.
I think so. Honestly, for me, I've never been a big boxing fan. I didn't grow up in the time where it was fun to be a boxing fan. I think pay-per-view kind of ruined it because you don't really hear about guys until they're already champions. So, like, you don't really get to follow their career and rise.
Right.
But so, yeah, with me and, like, the times I've enjoyed boxing or I've enjoyed UFC is when it's just a super marquee matchup where I know both people, I know a bunch about it, and De La Hoya does have that name recognition. Like if he was going to fight, I mean, if he was going to fight Floyd again, I'd watch. Yeah,
yeah, I guess. I mean, hell, I don't know. I feel bad. I feel like when you get to a certain age, and in boxing, I mean, in the early 40s. You got to stop, man. I mean, the opportunity to get hurt, whether it's physically, mentally, is just too strong. But at the end of the day, you know what? If these guys are willing to sign a waiver and they're willing, they know what's at stake, and they take the class, or they have the doctor explain to them the risk. And if Mike Tyson says, "You know what? I don't care. I want to go make $1 million, and I don't care who I beat or who beats me," it's probably more. I guarantee you're right to a certain extent. We're going to watch that as opposed to the number 5th ranked middleweight taking on the number 4th ranked middleweight who you don't even know who that is.
Right. Yeah. No. And a lot of UFC, or I don't remember if it was UFC or boxing fans were upset because I don't know if you remember when they announced that Tyson was going to fight whoever he's fighting. I forget. There's also Jake Paul, the YouTuber, is going to fight Nate Robinson, the NBA player.
Right.
People got mad, like, oh yeah, like people just care about like what the most entertaining thing is and not who the best fighter is. And I'm like, well, that's the fault of the sport for not teaching us or not necessarily not teaching us, but not making it more accessible. Like when guys are coming up, like, oh, this guy's going to be really good. Like I didn't know about Conor McGregor until he was a champion.
Roy Jones Jr. is who Mike Tyson is fighting, and I've seen some clips of their workouts a little bit, and I know workout clips are misleading because I've been wrong many times, just watching people train and thinking, wow, he looks so much faster, and then they get their ass beat in the ring. But I will say this, based on the workout clips, Roy Jones Jr. looks old. I think Mike Tyson's going to destroy him. The one thing I do know, I'm going to watch. And if it means I got to lay down $29.99 or whatever the price is or more than that, I'm going to do it because this is crazy.
Oh, I'm going to watch. I'm going to watch so I can talk about it now for sure.
Roy Jones Jr. for years was the pound for pound, the best boxer in football. I mean, best boxer in the sport. I mean, for years, he just wasn't in the high, upper weight class. And of course, Mike Tyson's a legend. So, hey man, I'm looking forward to it. If it means Roy Jones Jr. is going to have to eat out of a straw for a couple of months, so be it. I guess if he gets his $1 million or whatever he's going to get. But anyway, he's Playboy Marty. I'm Ronnie Rantz. Don't forget Sports Shorts Daily. Please click like, share this video. Also subscribe to our YouTube page, Sports Shorts presented by Ronnie Rantz. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow. Sports Shorts presented by LeBear's Casino.